Okay, in this episode, we're going to talk about all the various ways you can select colors in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and create just a new document. And if you go to the file New, it brings up this window here, and then you can choose from their pre-created documents. I'm going to go to Photo, and I'm going to choose, and let me see, view all presets, and I'm going to choose a 8x10 portrait. And then you can always come over here to the side and put in the dimensions that you want, the resolution that you want, the color mode that you want to work in, and what you want your background color to be. And I'm going to go ahead and say create, and that'll just give me a blank canvas to work from. And then just for safety's sake, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my background just so I'm not working right on my background layer. And I'm going to just choose my paintbrush tool for this, just so you guys can see what's going on there. And so the first way we have of selecting color is over here in our tool palette, and we've probably used this before. We've talked about this guy a little bit before, the color picker. And there's a lot going on right here. You've got your foreground color, that's the one that's sort of in the front position, and you've got your background color. You can always reverse those two by hitting this little arrow. And if you have colors selected here, you can always hit this little button to revert them back to black and white, because you know that when we work on layer masks, we use black and white paint a lot. So that's just a quick way to get back to black and white. But if we want to select or change the color, then we can just click on it, and that brings up our color picker window. There's actually a lot more going on in this window than you might first think. So generally it comes up in the default of the H in HSB, but if you see, there's lots of little radio buttons here, and as I click around, I get different sort of picker windows over here on the left. So if you ever come in and it looks weird to you, just know that it's probably on something other than the default, which is the H in hue, saturation, and brightness. So there's actually a bunch of different color spaces represented in here. You've got HSB, which is hue, saturation, and brightness. You've got RGB, red, green, and blue. You've got lab color space, which is a weird three-dimensional color space. And then you've got the subtractive color space, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. You've also got the web color space represented here by the hexadecimal code. And if you click on this color libraries button, you have all of the printing ink color spaces that are out there in the world. I'm going to go back to the color picker because that's really where I want to work. And the way this guy works here is that I can drag my slider up and down to select the particular color that I want. And then I can come over here and pick the shade of that color that I want by moving the little circle around. So if I want like a dark red, I can move that circle down there. Now do keep in mind that there are a couple of warning boxes going on in here. And so this top one here is sort of warning you that more than likely no color printer in the world is going to be able to represent that color or print that particular color. So it's going to default to something a little duller more than likely, because remember, our screens can project better color than what we can actually reproduce on printed paper. So if you just click on that little box, it'll take you to what it thinks is the closest approximation to what you probably can get out of a printer. And then this one is just saying that this is not a web safe color. So there are 256 web safe colors that are out there that are supposed to be, when viewed on different platforms and different softwares, that they are all come up identically. If it's not a web safe color, there's no guarantee that on a PC, it's going to look the same as it is on a Mac. That's going to look the same in Safari as it would in a Windows browser, that kind of thing. So if you're doing web work, you can restrict yourself to web safe only colors by checking this box on, and then it really won't let you choose anything that's outside that particular web safe color area. I'm not too worried about that right now, so I will just pick one that is at least printable. Okay, so then once you're happy, you say OK, and then that sets your foreground color, because that's the one I clicked on in your palette here. And then, of course, if I were to use my regular old paintbrush over here, I am going to paint with that color. If I want to change my background color, same thing. I just click on the background color. I get the same color picker. I can select, let's say I want a nice green, and then say OK. And then I get my two colors over here in the, and if I want to reverse them, I just hit that little arrow button there, or I can also hit the X key to reverse them. So I'm hitting my X key, and you can see that that's swapping my colors out right there. So that's another keyboard shortcut for you. A couple of other ways you can select colors. You do have palettes that you can open up. There's the color palette, which works much like the color picker that we just saw. So I can just keep this up all the time if I want to. And if I'm painting in Photoshop, then that's something I might want to do. Okay. We also have our swatch palette, and our swatch palette allows us to reserve colors, so we can sort of save them over here. So let's say I know I'm going to be painting with this pink color again, but I need to swap away from it. Look, I've already done that. I've swapped away from that color. And so now I want to reserve that color in my swatch palette. So to do that, the first thing I need to do is get this pink color back, because I've already changed it. It's no longer over here. So there's a tool I can use for that called the eyedropper tool. All right, if I select the eyedropper tool, then any color that's in my image already, I can click on, and it'll put that color in my color palette for me, or in my foreground color for me. So if I clicked on this green, oh look, it turns the foreground color green. But I need my pink color back here, or my red color, whatever you want to call that. And so now what I can do is I can come over here and say, you know what, I need a new swatch. I want to create a swatch so I can reserve that color. And it's going to give me that color, and then I can call it whatever I want. And say OK. And so now it'll reserve that red in the swatch palette for me. Okay, so now that I've got the pink one reserved, I want to go ahead and get the green one reserved. So I'm going to flip it to the foreground, come back over to my swatch palette, and click on New again. It's my green one. I'm going to call that Dan Green, and say OK. And now I've got both those colors reserved in my swatch palette here. So if I need to, so if I click away and I go, oh, you know what, I need a yellow paint for a while, blah, 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 blah. But now I need to go back to my original pinkish color that I made. I can click on that, and it brings it back to my foreground color. And now I can paint back, whoops, I picked on the wrong one. There you go, that one. Now I can paint back my original pink color. If I want my green color that I made, I can click on that guy, and that gives me my green color. Okay, so that's what swatches are. They're a way of reserving your color. Okay, so that's kind of how you get around with color in Photoshop.